Before we introduce ourselves, there's just on a show of hands. I think I expect a few people to put their hands up, but how many of you are hiring mini-me's, or your hiring managers are hiring mini-me's at the moment? Are your teams as diverse as you would like? So there's a few there. So from our experience at Aon, when we go out to early careers, there is a big issue with diversity, and I think that's the theme from today. So to introduce us, so my name's Amber. I've been at Aon for just over a year now, but before that I worked for M&S in their talent acquisition team. So I have done early careers, management recruitment, volume recruitment, and all sorts of projects. And one of my projects was actually to find an assessment provider. And I came across a company called Cute, who are now Aon. And I love what they did so much that I now work for them. So I've completely changed my career. So it's achievable at any age, which I'll come on to later. And then this is my Abbie, who I work with, one of my clients, and she's going to tell you a little bit about her.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Abbie. So I've been at Ocado for, about 10 months now, and was basically brought in to look at our recruitment strategy and actually our pastoral care of our current graduates that we were recruiting. So we'll talk about the challenges and such, but we didn't have a defined emerging talent team before I joined. So yeah, very interesting.
So to just tell you a little bit more about Aon, we were a company called Cute, but Aon bought us because they loved our technology and our science behind our products. So predominantly assessment and selection, but that can be for recruiting, but it can also be for developing people as well. So 90 countries, 40 languages, 30 million assessments, and one of the reasons that I joined them is because their assessments are very fair. And, you know, for me, it was really important. I do not have a degree. I come from a dodgy council estate. Actually, on paper, I'm probably not employable. But because people put me through good assessments, I actually got some decent jobs. So that's why it was really important for me. So the sorts of people we work with, you know, huge companies, smaller companies, all for different needs. So there's about 4,500 that we're working with at this moment in time across all different sectors.
Perfect. So I'm just going to talk you through what we did and kind of how we've used this technology to really help and support us with our recruitment process. So when I joined, we had quite a few challenges that were coming up. So we were basically looking to be able to see how we could make a number of things a little bit easier. Do you mind sitting? That's okay. So I recruit currently within the graduate space, so I'm sure many of you will have had this, that we were having lots of candidates, but actually we're having high drop-off rates at each of the different stages. So we were finding that although we were recruiting, you know, however many people and having so many people really interested, actually they weren't going through our process for a number of reasons, I think. So it could be that actually wasn't interesting enough, or perhaps if you've done the same assessment over and over again, how likely are you to do that in that stage? We definitely recruited mini-me's. I was amazed when I walked in and saw a graduate population. Everyone looked the same, honestly, to a point where the guys' hairs would all flick in the same direction, which is a little bit intimidating walking into a room like that. We've grown, so we were looking after 9 different programs, so now looking after 11, which also includes technology, which is a huge growth area for us. And actually, it wasn't just we're going to recruit 1, we were recruiting 11, which is an interesting challenge in itself. Because, as we were saying before around the diversity stats, actually, we were really nervous about the potential of unconscious bias. So we were doing things like, and I'll show you in the next slide, about like telephone interviews and such. And I think a big worry for us was, were we just recruiting over and over again the same people? And actually, is that the right thing to do when we know that businesses that are more diverse and inclusive have better kind of responses later on? So in terms of our old process, it probably looks quite similar to a lot of people's in the room. So people would put in their application. To be able to get through that stage, they would need to have a 2-1 or a first from a red brick university, and they'd have to have a BB at A-level. No BTECs, no kind of access courses. That was just the way that it worked on that side. Going through to CV screening, that's kind of what we looked for. We'd then do numerical and verbal reasoning tests. Now, of the candidates that had got through, only 30% were completing. So that was really nerve-wracking that actually our stats were really dropping here. Our telephone interviews, probably quite similar to some of the challenges you guys have, were quite manual for our team. So we had, you know, a poor graduate on a rotation who was doing like 12 interviews a day, right? So 30 minutes of just tell me about a time when, tell me about, it's just not, not a good use of their time and not a good learning experience. We then have an assessment day, and I'd probably say it was probably one of the harsher ones I've seen. So kind of halfway through the day, there'd be quite an intense cut. But that was over a lunch, right? So the guys are talking to the graduates that are already there, telling them how wonderful the company is. And then somebody else would walk in the room and say, right, you, come with me, grab your bags in. Absolutely not okay from an employer brand perspective. So we've rectified that, so that's cool. So in terms of, I guess, kind of what we decided to do and where we decided to move forward from, I'm really pleased to say we've dropped the 2-1 and the AAB A-level background. It just wasn't relevant in what we're doing, and actually we have our own recruitment struggles. So I don't know how many companies here are based in London. We're not. We're based in Hertfordshire in a place called Hatfield, which, if anybody knows it, is not the most potentially desirable area to go and work. And we struggle to actually find people who, especially in kind of the Gen Z population, who want to go out of London rather than into London. So it was just absolutely the right thing to do. We went through a number of different stages. So we worked with Amber and Francesca and a couple of us from Aon to talk about what were the right things, so actually what were we looking for. So we were looking to basically make sure that we're getting a really good cultural fit, but also they'd have the ability to rotate from one area of the business to another area of the business with ease, which is the kind of digital readiness tool. So this tool, just to kind of very briefly go over it, is partially personality kind of testing. It's called a DET 15. The other part is kind of a logic test that they'll go through. So a number of different gamified assessments that they'll run through. If they're successful at that stage, they then go through to the video interviewing, and I'll talk a bit more about actually what that looks like. They then come through and have an assessment centre, and I'm really pleased to say we've condensed it just to be a half a day, so there's no more cuts, which is really important. In terms of what we're actually measuring, so we talked a little bit about the digital readiness. Something that we were really interested to make sure is that people could, as I say, move from one place to another place with loads of confidence. So we have some people who go from our operations, so in the warehouse, to working in a legal department. You need to have people who are able to transfer some of the skills in a completely new environment. We're really interested as well to make sure that people, were able to learn the new skills that were required. And moving into the kind of the more of the personality side, we're really interested to find out actually what's making people tick from a personality perspective. And are they, not that this is the end tool, but are they kind of a potential Ocado group cultural fit? And that was really important for us going forward. This is the bit where everyone kind of gasps at me. So we decided to go with AI within our video assessment. What that means is that my team will score one of the 7 questions that we ask of every candidate through a video interview, and 6 are scored by AI. It's not as scary as it seems, I promise you. We have, a control question in there to make sure that we can kind of monitor how that AI is scoring. Each question is rated out of 1 to 9. So we kind of say a traditional kind of, for our motivation question anyway, a 5 as a pass and above. In that motivation question, the question we ask is, tell us why you're really interested in this opportunity. In truth, if you can't tell us why you're interested in working in that opportunity, why have you applied in the first place? And second of all, I guess the other questions would help to kind of coach any of those out as well. I guess for us, because we have got that control element in terms of being able to score that one question, what it also means is actually if at any point we wanted to go back through what the AI has scored and rescore, we can also do that. And also if there's any kind of, we just want to go back and cross-check scores across the teams, we can also do that as well. So again, in terms of the Ocado group behaviours, these are the questions, the other 6 questions that we're asking around. And I guess we found it really useful to actually, when we then come to an assessment centre, we're finding people who feel like more of an Ocado cultural fit. I've got to say, in terms of the assessor feedback that we've had has been really strong. So we've seen, don't quote me on this, about 230 candidates so far. Probably 1 or 2 I've been challenged on why have we brought this person here, which is really good. In terms of last year, we had many more people that we weren't sure how they'd managed to get through that process. In terms of some of the efficiency savings, I've got a team of me and 4 other individuals. We would not have got through this if we didn't have the video tool. So we had, as you can see, 1,187 that completed the interviews, which would have been just way too many hours of our team's time if we were going to be doing anything like that. What we decided to do, so our first kind of 100 candidates that came through this process, we looked at what a median score might look like. Remembering as well that within early careers, actually, a lot of people have never interviewed before, so a lot of the answers that they have might not be quite as high as an experienced hire. So if you are going to be using this for more experienced hires, I'd expect that to be a little bit higher in different areas. But we did still see 348 people who were suggested passes at that stage, which was excellent. In terms of the others, so suggested review as an example, 3.5 to 4.5, we're currently kind of looking at that because there are certain schemes. So as example, we've got a software engineering scheme where actually some of our suggested reviews have been our high flyers on the day. So we, as an internal process now, we've nearly finished our kind of recruitment, can start to look at, is that the right benchmark? Do we need to be redefining based on different schemes? But now we've got some of the data, we can look at that. And then a suggested fail is 3.5 and below. So in terms of candidate feedback, so none of our candidates have started yet, and I guess that's quite important to say. I think video interviews is a really interesting one because I think a lot of people assume, and I definitely did, I didn't know if people would do it and go through the process. We've done it, we've had over 1,000 people go for it. The feedback that we're having is that as a process goes and nobody likes being assessed, actually people are really enjoying it and they're finding it a really interactive way to be able to recruit, to be able to go through that recruitment process rather. And actually what they're saying is, because it's so interactive, we've played kind of fun videos and such that our lovely graduates put together for us. And actually it becomes more, like we were just saying before about the company persona, you can add more personality in there because it almost, you have more time, I guess, to interact with the employer beforehand, because we're showing kind of videos and such before each of those stages. So far, so good. The candidates seeming to enjoy it, but I'll let you know in September when they all start. But thank you. I'll pass back to Amber to talk about.
Well, I'm not going to talk for this. I'm not going to talk for this bit because I'm going to actually show you a video.
What you're seeing is a job candidate using Aon's speech-to-text artificial intelligence. How? By recording herself in response to questions presented on the screen. The questions link to personality traits in response to how she acts in specific situations. The AI extracts what she says and creates a transcript, all while removing any auxiliary data and standardizing input for further algorithm processes. The natural language processing AI then goes through the text identifying words and phrases that would potentially be used by expert raters to score the answer. The AI is trained to work with actual behavioral indicators to create a fair and transparent process. This ensures the data is handled in a glass box approach instead of a black box AI approach, replicating and enhancing the best human raters method of finding positive and negative behavioral indicators. These are linked to different personality traits used to formulate a score for each trait and for each candidate. The personality model that the AI is rating against is Aon's validated Adept 15 framework. The final scores for each candidate are generated in reports or in candidate management systems automatically. Recruiters can leverage the AI scores for rank ordering or screening candidates in the hiring process, making informed hiring decisions easy. Circling back to our glassbox approach, recruiters can choose to step in and adjust the AI scoring should they see the need to do so. One example of this is making adjustments for things like human validation based on additional information about the candidate. This allows for the best possible augmentation of human and AI expertise. With the help of technology like speech-to-text, AI is one more step toward transparent processes, bias mitigation, and effectively making valid and reliable predictions.
So, having been a recruiter for about 20 years, as I said, when this was coming out and people were talking about interviewing with AI, I was terrified. I used to recruit more than 12, about 20 a day I would be interviewing. So when I started my career, it was all about human telephone interviewing, but I'm sure most of you know sometimes you get on the telephone and very, very quickly you realise that this person isn't right for you because they're not motivated, they don't want to be there, but you've still got to go through the whole process and you stop listening. Then it moved to actual video interviewing, where actually it tended to be just a telephone interview that was moved over to a video platform. The good thing about that was candidates could complete it at any time. You couldn't probe, but still the questions did allow for a little bit of bias. I mean, I used to see some where people were hiding in the shower doing it because it was the only quiet place in their house. You know, mums would walk in, cats would jump on their head, all sorts of things, peculiar things would happen. And you had to stay focused on what they were saying, so that was quite hard to do. And then VidAssess AI come out, and there's different types of AI. There was AI that took into account your facial expressions, and that worried me because I recruited for the whole of the South and Southeast, where there were loads of different cultures that did have different facial expressions when you were interviewing them or when you were watching the videos. So when I joined Aon and they said ours is going to be based on speech content only, it was like, you know, fantastic. This is a game changer because, you know, for me to sit and do 20 interviews a day was a hard slog, and it didn't matter what happened, bias would creep in. You just can't help it, especially at the end of a day. So, you know, for me, moving into this, Ocado are doing a great thing because they have their, you know, motivational question that the human scores as well, but the machine is doing it. When we went live, I actually was so curious to see how I would compare to the machine that I listened into them. And most of them, we were very similar. You know, I've been recruiting a long time, so, you know, I would say I'm pretty good at that. But there were some where we disagreed. And when I went back, the machine was right. I had been biased. There were strong accents, or it was after I'd done about 20 and I wasn't listening properly. So the machine was doing a better job than me. And this is what we're finding now. When we do validations on it, the machine is doing a better job. So it's one to consider. So to finish off, I'm just going to go through some top tips for early. I could talk about this for hours, and Luke will be telling me off if I do, so I'll try and shorten it to as much as I can. The first tip with early careers is attracting them and engaging them through the process. So, you know, if they are completing a test or assessment, it shouldn't feel like it. And you should be, you know, we've talked about it all the day about your persona. We'll call it persona now. I called it brand, culture and future, but we'll call it persona. Because it's really important that person that's going through the process is learning about you as they're going through there. And there's lots of different ways that you can do that. So you can have videos like Ocado has. You can have storyboards. So some of the clients we work with, they have a wrapper around their assessments. EasyJet have an animated one that sort of takes you from one assessment to the other, but teaches you a little bit about the job. And the other thing that I would say is one of the big requests we get at the moment, early careers, is giving feedback. So I work with M&S, and M&S do a candidate feedback report, and they said people that were getting regretted in the process were emailing them and saying, thank you so much. It doesn't matter. This report, based on my you know, assessment results, has really helped me see where my strengths and weaknesses are. And by doing an assessment process like this, it's really differentiating you from your competitors. You're all going out to find the same people, and we'll move on to that in a minute. So, you know, if you're saying that you're a future-focused company and then they hit your recruitment process and it is proper traditional, they might not believe you and they might drop out. Next tip is building the workforce of the future. We talked about the digital readiness model there. So the reality is when early careers, when they come in and join you now, there's not always a career path up to the top. Not everybody can be the next CEO. So they might move sideways or they're going to leave. So the best thing to do is when you're bringing people into your business, make sure they can cope in different roles because you've got much more of a chance of keeping them. Your retention's going to be better if they can actually, you know, move into different directions. So sometimes we suggest with early careers, assess them at the beginning, take them through the process. So at the end of their program, reassess them. Are they right for that role? But actually, is there other roles within your business they could be doing as well? Because if you're bringing in people that can learn and they're agile, you can put them where you need to be. And one of the things that we also look for, I think, is resilience. We don't talk about it as our digital readiness model, but so many people say to me, we get them, they do their program, and then very quickly afterwards, they go and work somewhere else. So you need to assess the resilience there. Does anyone know what these companies have in common? Shout out if you do. If not, I'll have to tell you. So none of them care whether you've got a degree or not. And this is what we are hearing. So what is early careers? Actually, grads, apprenticeships, are your apprentices, are they young? Or actually, could they be lots of different age groups? Is it really early careers? Is it just the start of your career within that company? So it's just something to think about whether you are, because you really, you know, if everyone's competing for the same people and you want a diverse team, you need to go out and find talent in what we call unexpected places. And one, you know, with some of the clients we work with, they say, well, we're doing apprenticeships and we're doing graduates, so we need a different process. And we're like, why? Because actually, if you're looking for people to do the same job and you need them to have the same behaviours, why do you need a different process? Actually, everybody you're bringing in, if you go through a behaviours and ability and you're removing all the bias, you're going to get the right people at the end. You might have a different norm group, so you might be comparing the apprentices together. This is still evolving. So with some of the clients we're working with, do they need a different norm group? Because if an apprentice has got the behaviours and ability and has got loads of work experience, will they be a better performer of somebody that's a graduate and got the behaviours, but, you know, is very academic and maybe have less experience in the real world, as we would call it? And that's us.